Okay, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Jake McAfee, local real estate agent. If you're not, I appreciate all the support. I had a lot of people reach out to me over this little break. To be very frank with you, I sold a lot of real estate and videos just kind of got put on the back burner. That's no excuse. I'm not gonna let it be an excuse, but it's what happened. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there and for checking it back out. So, all right, we've got a lot to talk about. Let's jump right into some of these news updates. Some of them are gonna be a little more exciting than others. The city of Fort Wayne just released its budget for 2026. It has a proposed budget of $244 million, $244.8 million. The majority of that, about 70.6%, is gonna go to public safety. So that's police, firefighters, and then youth violence preventions. That's where, again, the majority of the budget's going. 40.5 million are gonna go for neighborhood infrastructure. So the majority of that's gonna go to streets, roads, bridges, things like that. There's also gonna be a portion going to trails, sidewalks, alleys. I feel like no matter what side of the aisle you're on, as long as the money is being spent responsibly, I think we can all agree these are good things to invest in. And then about 4 million are gonna go to Parks and Recreation Department for maintenance projects. McMillan Park Pool is gonna need some work, construction designs for the Hannah Homestead Park. And then there's gonna be new playgrounds at all 6 parks. And I go to those a lot, so I do know it's time. I mean, they just eventually wear out with the sun and, you know, the winter beating on them and kids going up and down. Eventually some of the plastic starts to corrode and break. So those all seem like very reasonable things. So we'll see how it's implemented, but so far it seems like they're being good stewards of our tax dollars. So the next update, and this kind of piggybacks off that. So Mayor Sharon Tucker is creating a task force to navigate the new SB1 Indiana Senate bill that was passed this past April. For those of you who don't know, the state of Indiana, they passed a bill that had provisions and limits on property taxes and property tax increases. It's designed to protect homeowners. I mean, if you own a home, you've watched your property taxes go up. And while that can be justified through the increased home values and just the cost of everything has gone up, so the government's going to need more to continue to provide the same services, the flip side is that can, you know, really get out of hand and it can hurt people, especially those on fixed income. You know, if you're on a fixed income and your property taxes continue to rise, that can create a real problem for you. So this bill was designed to protect Indiana homeowners. The challenge is that property tax really funds a lot of things that cities function on. I know the mayor is gonna try to figure out, like, okay, where do we get these new funds from? Where do we cut back? That kind of thing. You know, one particular investment they brought up, and we're gonna get into some detail on this, but the North River Fieldhouse downtown, you know, that's supposed to have a pretty big economic impact. And so they're gonna try to figure out how to fund that. And again, I'm gonna get into more details on this. The task force is gonna have multiple members of city council, the city controller, and then other consultants to try to get a variety of opinions and input to make sure that we don't overlook anything. It's going to have an effect on local school districts. For example, the Fort Wayne Community Schools has a proposed budget of $419 million for next year. So, you know, CFO Rosie Shipman has said, we're going to have to learn to live on a budget that we create and say no when it's not in the budget. We're going to have to be very, very purposeful. You could argue that that should have always been the case, but I think I understand what she was trying to say. These property tax caps are expected to cut the operating budget by $11 million. You know, this is not tied to instructional costs, but more district level services and utilities and stuff like that. So they're not going to cut back on like teacher salaries or curriculum or anything like that. More of the operational budget is what it sounds like. Fort Wayne Community Schools is also considering issuing public bonds to fund some of their operational expenses. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. You know, it really is going to force us to take a hard look at what we're spending. You know, when you have a surplus and you have unlimited money coming in, it's easy to have bloat and waste. And I'm not saying we have, I'm just saying that's human nature. And so, you know, this is going to really make us sharpen our pencils and see, you know, my thing is going to be, are we going to try to cut expenditures or are we just going to try to replace that income? And, you know, that's something I'll be educating myself and seeing how it plays out as time goes on. So something else I'm excited about, the construction of the new soccer stadium is underway. We're still on track for opening next year. For those of you who don't know, I did a past video on this, but you can check that out. But it's located off Bass Road, like just west of 69. It's gonna have 9,000 seats for soccer games, and they're also gonna do concerts there, and that'll host 10,000 people because there's some standing room only. So that's underway and on schedule. So we'll see how it shapes up. Kind of right in line with what we were talking about before. Fort Wayne Community Schools, Snider High School is currently building a new $30 million football stadium. For decades, they've played at Northrop High School. You know, and I played at Dwenger, so our home field was Concordia, so I know what it was like to get on a bus for a home game, and now they play at home, which is pretty cool. I think it helps keep more of the money in-house, and it's also, you know, just more convenient. So they're gonna hold 4,400 people. It's gonna have modern turf, and some enhanced amenities. And again, that's under construction, due to be complete by fall of 2026. So that'll be cool for the students there. I briefly mentioned the North River Fieldhouse. So that is on the north side of the river, like just across from Promenade Park and that area, right by Science Central. That has been underway. They've been trying to figure out, you know, they've been taking steps to see how they're gonna make this happen. Over the summer, the city announced that they have 2 finalists for the development. Originally, 20 developers submitted proposals. They got it down to 2. The 2 they're considering are Price Brothers Development out of Kansas City and Related Midwest out of Chicago. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I'm sure we'll be learning more as time goes on. If you remember, there's a little drama. Chuck Surak and Eric Doden actually tried to buy the land for $12 million. They had some pretty bold plans for the area, but basically the city said, thank you, but no thank you, and the land is not for sale. They wanted to keep it and control more of the development. This did lead to a little bit of a slightly contentious back and forth, if you remember that, but it appears all parties have moved on. So the site is 29 acres, as I mentioned, north side of the river. It's bounded by Clinton, Harrison, and 4th, again, right across from Science Central. Should be seeing some visuals of that right now as I speak. The site was previously used as a rail yard and a scrap yard dating back to 1902, but it hasn't been in use since 2006. Phase 1 is gonna include 160,000 square foot facility designed to accommodate basketball, soccer, volleyball, wrestling, cheerleading, pickleball, baseball, and flag football. If you have children, you already know the sports has changed since we were kids. There is so much money, so many tournaments, so much going on. Just with my daughters, they do competitive cheer, and we're in different cities like every weekend throughout the winter. So I think this has pretty big impact. They're saying this is going to be a $50 to $60 million investment, but it'll spur $36 million in economic activity, creating 900 jobs and $13 million in labor income annually. The city also said it could create 54,000 hotel nights and 733,000 in annual tax revenue. So it does have big long-term implications, and it could create a hub that could grow from there. You know, hotels, restaurants, you know, the amenities that go along with these sports complexes. And then future phases, like I said, future phases are going to include housing, a hotel, restaurant, and retail space. So the idea is get the field house and then build out from there. The city also announced that DORA will be expanding. So for those of you who don't know, DORA is an acronym for Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area. Basically, you can bring your alcoholic drinks outside. You know, that was kind of a controversial thing when it was announced last March, but the idea was they were trying to increase connectivity and create an economic boom for the, you know, so that way if you don't just go and sit at one bar or one restaurant, you know, you can grab a cocktail and go to another one and go get dessert over here and kind of pop around downtown and spend money. So this has been in place since last March. It was originally the area around Parkview Field, the landing, and Promenade Park. It's the area in blue that you can see on the screen right now. And they're going to be expanding it from an electric works all the way to north of the river to, you know, I think try to get up near this field house and try to make this all inclusive to tie it all together. That's the area in red you see on the map. A city council gave this a preliminary approval with a 6-1 vote. Councilman Paul Ensley was the only no, and then 2 were absent. You know, critics have said, and I understand, I kind of had my, you know, hesitations, like, do we really want more alcohol? Do we want people drinking more and walking around downtown while drinking? Is that necessarily a good thing? 5th District Councilman Jeff Paddock He oversees the downtown area. He was originally skeptical, but he's actually since changed his position after seeing it play out. He was quoted saying, "I had some thoughts about it, some misgivings, if you will, but as this has rolled out, we see a lot of responsible use. I think anything we can do for economic development, help a business sell a product as long as it's responsible, is something I'm certainly for." And that's kind of where I'm at. I think as long as you're responsible, you know, the majority of people I know, my friends, colleagues, coworkers, everybody, like, we can all handle this responsibly. Like, we could go out on a date night and have a couple drinks. We're not gonna like break bottles and get in fights and drive home hammered. You know, I think that's the idea, is like, hey, let's help these businesses, keep an eye on it, make sure it's something that we feel is a benefit to the city. And, you know, I'm for it. If you've ever been to like cities like, you know, Savannah, Georgia, you can walk around with beers, and I've never seen anything happen around there. You know, I've been there a few times. So hopefully this expansion is a good thing, and hopefully it helps businesses, because, you know, if you've been paying attention, Electric Works has lagged a little bit from where the expectations were. But I think as more people, more apartments, more visitors, especially if the connectivity increases, I think it's going to be a good thing. That's it for this week. That's the end of the update. I really appreciate you watching if you made it this far. If there's a type of video you'd like to see, or if there's something that we discussed today that you have thoughts on, please share. Like, I really want to create a dialogue in these comments. I don't want it to just be my voice. I want the city of Fort Wayne, both for people who are moving here or people who are trying to learn more about it, I want them to have input from other people. So if you have thoughts on this, if you're educated on this, or if you have questions about it that someone else might have, please leave a comment. Make sure you subscribe, and catch us on the next video.